I'd like to make a presentation on what women in Uganda are going through and also look at the adaptive measures. So my presentation overview is that I have the introduction, women, then I relate women, climate change and agriculture, look at the impact measures, adaptive strategies and the way forward. So just a brief on what Uganda is. Uganda is in the eastern part of Africa. It is mainly agriculture, and this agriculture contributes 60% to the economy. Women form 51%, with a very high fertility rate of each woman on average producing 7 children. Women contribute 80% of agriculture in both crop and animal farming. Agriculture contributes, as I had said, 60%, and there has been noted increased frequency and intensity of climate change in Uganda like anywhere else. So just how do we relate women, climate change and agriculture in Uganda? Women in Uganda are the food providers, like we have already heard. They carry out a lot of cultivation, and we have subsistence form of agriculture. That is where you grow your food and eat with limited commercial part. Women, they collect the firewood as that's the main source of energy for cooking. And women do a lot of work, especially as far as the households are concerned, on children, clothing them, paying school fees, providing shelter. So they carry most of that burden. So with the impact of climate change, it is very clear that in Uganda we've had all these extreme conditions experienced. We've had long droughts. The drought periods have prolonged. We've had erratic rainfalls being experienced in nearly all parts of the country, and therefore leading to uncertainty and risk in agricultural productivity. Flooding has increased of recent, destroying crops and making transportation of the crops to the markets quite difficult, especially most of the crops are sold in their fresh form. So when there's flooding, the transportation becomes a challenge. We've recently started to experience heavy hailstones. Because we are in the equatorial part of the world, we get hailstones, but of recent we've seen massive and strong hailstones destroying food, which leads to food insecurity, and with food insecurity, as we have already heard, it leads to family conflicts. We've had, because of scarcity of food, domestic violence coming to an increase. Also, because of the less income from food, it of course has led to higher levels of poverty, high crop failure leading to food insecurity, poor quality food harvested, because when the crops are destroyed, usually the harvest comes out poor. And when the poor production, when you harvest poor seed, for instance bean seed, because beans is one of the crops that most of our families depend on. So if the production of the bean seed is poor, then you find it becomes very difficult to sell that kind of bean seed. So there's been a lot of poor quality of food harvested. Greater post-harvest losses have been experienced. Also, we have increased incidence of pests and diseases in human, livestock, and crops. And for instance, we started to see banana wilt, coffee wilt at an increase, and most of these crops have, even when they used to, for instance, in the past you'd keep beans for some time, but now if you keep them without pesticides being used, then they get destroyed. That has been on an increase. We've seen less participation in community and other social activities by women especially. We have also had, what has happened is that now, because of the shortage of land that is productive, women have started to encroach, and families have started to encroach on the wetlands and forested areas. The rate at which the encroachment has reached in Uganda is very alarming. What has happened is that even now women, because they don't have enough produce from their agriculture, they've gone into petty trade. That one is seen. We've seen women going In the past, it was not common to see women jump on trucks and go to markets and sell products, but it has increased of recent, mainly because of shortage of food products. And this has led to the destruction of the culture. Of course, there has been also rural and urban migration, as they have already said. When men find it hard to get enough food, or they're not able to provide for their families the way they would like, they tend to go to urban areas where it is easy to get employment. And of course, with that rural-urban migration, we see some negative consequences out of that, with destruction of the culture and social fabric. We've seen increased work burden of women because they are left on their own to look after their families. And of course, the spread of diseases such as HIV/AIDS, because usually men, when they run out from their families, go to the urban centers, they tend to contract such diseases, and when they go back, they spread it out there. We've seen increased land conflict, especially in pastoral areas. The pastoral areas, sometimes the grass is not enough when the prolonged droughts take place, and so there's usually conflict in the land. And also, as they search for pasture and move from one place to another, then they get these tribal conflicts, and we've seen them on the rise of recent. So what are some of the adaptive measures that we have seen? And all this is based on the research that was done. We've seen minimum tillage practices being practiced. That is where you till where you need to plant. In the past, it was very common for people to plant big pieces of land. But now we've seen minimum tillage practices being used. We've seen mulching. It was not common for people to mulch because, being in fertile areas, people just grow crops. But now, because of the dry periods, which are very severe, and also sometimes when it rains, it washes away the soil. So the practice of mulching has been adopted by many people, especially the rural women. Crop rotation is yet another one that has been practiced. It used not to be so common, but is now commonly used because of fertility reduction in the soils. We've seen more use of herbicides and pesticides even in the rural areas. In the past, it was not easy, it was not common to find a woman in the rural area using a pesticide or herbicide, but now they have also started to use it because of the threats and the new diseases that have come on board because of climate change. If use of manure has increased, that is something that we used not to do, especially in the biggest part of the country. It was very easy to plant a crop, then it grows and you harvest, but now there's use of manure and the increase. We've seen the diversification of crop and animal husbandry being increased. It has been clear in my country, you would find, in Uganda, you'd find an area of purely for agriculture, another one for pastoral agriculture, but now you've started to see people mix. Those even who used to look after cattle can now do farming, crop husbandry, which used not to be. So there is that kind of mixed husbandry, animal and crop husbandry that is there. Women have also started to search for improved seeds and better animal breeds. Improved seeds is not common. It's a new thing that we've started to see in our country because you keep the seed that you had and plant it, but now we've seen people buying from shops. So in conclusion, the women are facing many challenges. They have been affected negatively in the agricultural sector because of climate change. It is very vivid, and now we need to look for the way forward. And I do agree with the solutions that Burkina Faso has talked about. Indeed, those are the exact solutions that our country would have to put in place in order to salvage the woman from the negativity of climate change.